Is there too much violence in video games? Is there no such thing as a non-violent video game? Is everybody right who's a boomer? Let's talk about it. What's up, human beings? Welcome back to another Midweek Speak here on the Games and Groceries channel, and we are here to talk about non-violent video games with you. So if you want to follow us on social media, on Twitter at Gaming Groceries, Instagram Games and Groceries, all one word, and you can find us on Facebook. Just search on Facebook, Games and Groceries. We're there, so we're here to talk about your answers about the question on hand, which is, what are your favorite non-violent video games? But first, let's just give some preface to this question. So recently on the podcast, we talked about Joe Biden's recent words about how video game directors are little creeps that just teach people how to kill people. But we also mentioned before that Joe Biden isn't the only one. He's not the only politician to point the finger at video games. He's not even the only Democrat, the only Republican, the only Green Party. It doesn't matter what party the Republicans or the politician, the candidates are in.
The politician, the person.
Good job, Adam. It's
just there are people who have this opinion about video games and video game developers.
Yeah. And that's just the thing, is that a lot of politicians have pointed the finger. And what do you think about all that?
Oh, just watch the podcast.
Just watch it. I get quite heated
about my opinion on his statement.
And this has been, a long debate. I feel like this has started really with Mortal Kombat. It's done its job before Mortal Kombat, but I still remember, because, I'm old enough to remember so fondly of the first Mortal Kombat, that was the first game to actually have a real ratings board for video games because it was too violent. And it kind of generalizes what video games are, that all video games are violent. All video games will instill violence in children, when in all actuality, it's not.
Yeah.
I think what politicians need to understand, that Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat, the games like this, they shouldn't count for all video games. That's generalization. Just like Donald Trump shouldn't be all politicians. All politicians are Donald Trump. All politicians are Joe Biden. You see how that works? It's generalizing, and that's, something that can, steer away from the real conversation. And we believe here on the Games and Groceries channel, which if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, by the way, if you haven't already. Ding dong. I don't know. But what?
You're so weird.
Yeah. But we on the Games and Groceries channel believe that, there's way more video games that don't rely on violence. And so do you on social media, because we asked you on social media, what are your favorite non-violent video games, just to give some examples of games that don't really rely on violence. Not that there's games on this list that have zero violence, but they don't rely.
Yeah, it's not the main point to be violent.
Exactly. So our first answer comes from Volt Supreme, who gives us a list of games. Telltale's Poker Night. Poker. Mini Metro, amazing sound design with that. Mario Kart, you were talking about that.
It's like the easiest thing.
Yeah, Mario Kart. Wario on the Wii with the kids. And all of the old LucasArts adventure games like Monkey Island. Yes, Day of the Tentacle. And I believe the original designers of Monkey Island went on to do Thimbleweed Park. I might be wrong on that. But yeah, those are some excellent games that don't rely on violence, including Mario Kart. You said that on the podcast.
Multiple times.
Mario Kart. I love Mario.
But what about Mario Kart? Our next answer comes from Elite Cat, and she says Stardew Valley and Untitled Goose Game, which is Adam's favorite game.
Honk honk. I'm a crab.
What a honk honk.
I'm a goose crab.
Honk honk.
Oh. But yeah, Stardew Valley, of course, has, kind of combat, but it's optional. It doesn't really rely on violence. And Untitled Goose Game does have violence. He aggressively goes for your keys. He aggressively goes for your glass. There's violence.
Aggressive does not mean violent, though.
Oh, but it still has aggressive tones in me.
Yeah, but the thing is violent. He's aggressive, not violent. Aggressive does not mean violent.
That's true. Yeah. Untitled Goose Game. The game.
Anyway.
But yeah, bonus points for Untitled Goose Game. So our next answer, of course, comes from WT Famicom, a gaming podcast. And he says, Braid. Wait. And I'm not sure what he means by the weights. Does he mean that there's violence in Braid? I mean, there's jumping on heads. Is there violence? It's been a long...
Maybe that's what he means. Like, I don't know.
I guess. I haven't played Braid in a long time, so maybe I'm remembering wrong. But his next game, the designer behind Braid, made The Witness, which made me have violent thoughts because I couldn't solve anything. So maybe that's what he means. I don't know. Maybe.
Our next answer comes from Terms and Conditions Apply podcast. And they say, I would go with Cities Skylines for this. An all-around great simulator game with no violence to be found, which is always nice. I don't know what that game is. Do I know it? So it's just like you build a city, right?
I believe. I've never played it. I think it's on Xbox Game Pass. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I do recognize the name now that I think about it. And I think that's all it is. It's just like when, you know those games when we were little, you could like build a zoo and build a
Zoo Tycoon.
Yeah, so like I think it's something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not...
Just you build a city.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a nice little simulator game. Talking about another simulator game that's coming up pretty soon, Flight Simulator. Coming out on Game Pass, you get to fly a plane. That's awesome.
No violence in that.
No violence. No violence in that. So then we have some games from Nikki at Commander Nikki. She lists out, I love Stardew Valley. And I do too. Stardew Valley is awesome. Made by one person, by the way, for 5 years.
Yep.
Well, he worked 12 to 14 hour days for 5 years straight just to make Stardew Valley. If you haven't played it yet, definitely. Stardew Valley, there is somewhat optional. There it is, somewhat optional combat, but it's definitely not violence, in my opinion. Also, walking simulators, Firewatch, What Remains of Edith Finch. Fantastic games. The Crew 2 is a fun racing game. The only violence is me screaming because I missed the time window by 0.5 seconds. Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah, right. If you put into a peaceful or avoid combat, Minecraft is also a very nice non-violent game. With creativity, you can get into building stuff and exploring the world. Abzu, Journey, Oxenfree, Pinball.
There you go.
Super Hexagon. Oh man, I missed Super Hexagon. It's a good game. Wow, I have more non-violent favorites than I thought. Then there's a whole point of definition of violence. Life is Strange 1, 2, Before the Storm, kind of Sea of Solitude with bullying. Definitely have some kind of violence in them, but they're topics that are handled counting towards a violent game. Are we talking cases just like Just Cause, Wolfenstein, to name some extreme examples I like? And then she also talks about how she likes Undertale. But yeah, she makes a good point here. What about the ones like Life is Strange, Sea of Solitude, that have, you know, some violence in it, but they bring up some topics that need to be discussed.
Yeah, it's not like violence like, oh, I'm gonna beat you up and kill you for no reason, like things like that. It's something that it's like, hey, this is happening in the world and we need to talk about it. We need to talk about this.
Yeah.
You know, so. Yeah,
there are some times where like, I was gonna say there is sometimes violence is the answer.
No.
Jeez.
There are some times where violence is necessary in the game.
Yeah, to make the story a point. Like, you can't talk about how violence is an issue in America without addressing violence.
Yeah, without showing it in a story setup. Our next answer comes from Cito's Sweet Home, and he says, my favorite non-violent games are Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon, Story of the Season series. There is something peaceful about just being able to farm, fish, and take care of animals. I feel that. He goes on to say, another favorite has to be the walking simulator, kind of like Virginia and Firewatch. I also have to add Life is Strange, Bound, Long Live the Queen, the Phoenix Wright games, and the Pokemon games. I love my RPGs, JRPGs, and action games, but sometimes you get tired of those shooty, gun-heavy shooters, you know? I think we can agree with that.
Oh, yeah. For sure. And that's the thing. There's a lot of answers that say Stardew Valley. There was a couple that said Firewatch. Of course, Untitled Goose Game. But like these are all just examples. Right off the bat, we asked you guys what are your favorite non-violent video games, and we already have like a handful of games just to go off of. And really, what politicians are going off of is Call of Duty, GTA, like basically those two.
Basically just those.
Maybe Mortal Kombat. like 3 games.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But before we get to our final thoughts, we just want to remind everybody, if you're liking this episode so far, definitely give it a like and share it with a friend who wants to come into the conversation. And speaking of coming into the conversation, write your thoughts in the comments down below. What are your favorite non-violent video games? Is there a lot of non-violent video games? Do you think video games are too violent because graphics are getting higher, violence is getting more real? What do you think, from both sides of the story here, from politician sides to, our side, I guess. I don't know, but definitely write them down below. If you haven't yet, like I said before, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So it brings us to our final thoughts here. And, I just want to put this out there that there have been many studies, reputable studies that, clearly state there is no evidence that backs up video games will make you violent. There's absolutely no evidence backing that up.
Yeah.
And there's even been universities in Sweden, universities, I want to say Harvard did a study. I'm probably not right on that.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but I know an Ivy League here did a study and they said, there is no evidence. And so I think this is kind of like a cop-out for real issues happening in America that, video games are the scapegoat of.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, this is just my little idea that just popped in my head. It's that they want to say it's video games, so that's what they go on. It's their first thought, but they don't think deeper. They don't think of mental illness because it's such a subject that everyone wants to avoid talking about and addressing. But I think a lot of violence comes from your past and mental illnesses that aren't being addressed, and it's still something that needs to be worked on being addressed. And it's just sad to see that people who make decisions for this country want to just have one easy answer and be like, oh, it's video games, stop your kid from playing video games and violence will be over.
Yeah. And it's just not the case. And I know Alex Vargas from the Angry Joe Show, he's a huge advocate for bringing up actual issues like mental health, like, gun violence in America. He says this whole video game scapegoat thing is just a distraction for the real issues that they want to hide, whether it be for financial gain or just not wanting to talk about it. I don't know. I'm not a politician. Can't really say for sure, but Alex Vargas really brings up good issues about that. But I think there's much bigger issues at stake than just saying that video games are too violent. And we've just discussed here that there's plenty of games out there, plenty of video games that people are really caring about creating that don't really rely on violence. So you can't really say that video games are too violent when you can only name 3. Yeah, politicians can.
That's if they can name the 3.
True that.
They'd say, oh, there's games with guns and shooting. It's all shooting.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what they're doing?
It is what it is. But that's kind of our discussion with that. But before we end this episode of Midweek Speak, just a little bit of an announcement. This is the final edition of Midweek Speak. We've said before that we want to rebrand the channel, and that rebranding is coming pretty soon. There's not going to be a Midweek Speak next week, but we're going to be replacing Midweek Speak with a new segment on the podcast, where we'll, invite you into the conversation on the podcast, kind of like an end of the show, reading through fan questions. And, I will have a topic that you all can answer. Like, what are your thoughts on whatever topic we talk about? And you can even throw in some random questions here and there.
Ask us questions, make comments.
Yeah.
Or just answer the question that we give you. But literally, you can say anything. If you say something bad or mean, it probably won't be read. But there you go.
Yeah. And we'll pick as many as we can. But we'll have a video next week. So instead of a Midweek Speak next week, we're going to have like an explanation video of what the rebranding is going to look like. So keep your eyes open on that. Really hope you like what we're going to do with the channel. We're really excited about it. But here's going with that. So we will see you in the next week's video, the announcement video, and we'll also have a guest on the podcast on Monday, so definitely look forward to that. But until then, we hope you enjoyed this conversation. Again, definitely give it a like and a share, and comment down below of what your thoughts are, and we will see you in the next video. Stay safe out there.
Bye.